Ready, and I hope that I'm live. I think I'm live, right? So first thing, good afternoon, everyone. I can see a lot of people have put the messages on the chat. So good afternoon, Ashok, Rahul, Rajesh, Ritesh, Vivek, Divesh, Bhupendra, and everyone, and Subharjit, Santosh. A lot of people logging in out there. So today's session is on a topic, which is uh, quite discussed, between the developer community: static versus singleton. And guys, let me know if you can hear my voice, just to check that my voice is seen, my voice is audible, and my screen is seen out there. Very quickly, so I have this design pattern lectures, which is there on Questpond, and I have been taking design pattern for a very very long time. And one of my favorite course, which is very near to me, is the Learn Design Pattern in 8 hours course. And whenever I, whenever this course is there in Questpond, and also I take a lot of trainings, and one of the question definitely comes in is that static versus singleton, right? So before I get into the topic, I want from everyone out there that what do you think? What do you think, that is static and singleton pattern both same, right? If yes, what, no, and so on. Please go ahead and put down on the chat saying that no, Shiv, we feel that static is different. Some people will say, oh, like singleton means creating one global object and static does that, right? So go ahead on the chat and put down, that why you think that singleton and static are different, or and if you think they are same, then why it is, right? So first thing, let us go ahead and let me use Google out here, and let us see what exactly this singleton pattern is, right? So I'll not waste time too much. Singleton pattern, what does Gang of Four talk about the singleton pattern? I can go to Wikipedia. I think that's the best source at this moment we can take as a source to understand, right? I have avoided PPTs today. Why? Because I feel that when I put some definition of PPT out there, it is possible that that definition is changed, or the definition has my own thought, right? So I would prefer to take the Gang of Four definition. So here, if you see the Gang of Four, what they have said is singleton design pattern is this and this and this, and let's look at the first statement. It restricts the instantiation of a class to one single instance, right? And this is useful, when you need one object is needed across the system. So basically, you want only single instance of a class across your complete project. Now why do you want a single instance of a class? There are many reasons for it. Like, first, one of the reasons is you want to go and cache some data, or probably you want to go and share some global data. For example, a hit counter must be, you want to cache some data like country master and state master, those kind of data. You don't want to hit the database again and again, right? So such are those scenarios, where singleton pattern can come to use. But now the question is, that's where the question is, right? So let us say I have, you can see my Visual Studio out here. So let us say I have a country object, a country class out here. Let me create a country class, right? And let me create an ID for a country and a name, right? So assume that I want to go and cache this country master, right? So I want to go and cache my master. So I want to go and read this data from the database and load it, and only once it should be loaded, and then afterwards it should not be loaded again and again. So the best way what you can do is you can go ahead and you can create a static object, right? So you can just say static list of country, right? And says countries is equal to new list of countries, and you can go and you can fill this object somewhere in the constructor must be. So country, what is that out there? Okay, the semicolon. List, okay, the list is the generics. We need a generics out here, so fine, generics, right? So in the constructor, what I can do is I can go ahead and I can load these countries from the DB, right? So must be, this is null out here, right? So this is null, and new list of countries, and we write here the code which can load the data from the DB. So now if you see, this small code out here does the same thing. So if you look at the Wikipedia definition, restrict the instantiation of a class to one single instance. So definitely the static keyword ensures that one single instance is there, not more than that, right? So that is one single instance. Second, it is useful when one object is needed to coordinate actions across other objects. So basically one single instance and static is doing it, right? So now let me go back on the chat. Coming back again. So what's the difference between singleton pattern and this static keyword, right? So let me go back and let us see some of the chat answers out there, and then we can decide. Remember that this session, I see it as a more of a discussion session. Definitely I'll be demonstrating, I will put down my points out here, but at the end of the day, I would like to also get upgraded. I would like to also know a lot of things from other people, right? Both are different because singleton pattern is an instance based, but static is not. Okay, so from Ajay Kumar I can see the message. Both are different because singleton pattern is an instance, definitely, but static is not. My question is, singleton is a pattern, it says that one single instance, right, Ajay? So static does that. So do I have to code something extra? A very simple question is, do I have to do some extra coding for it, right? Now again, like from Vishal, we have an answer here. Singleton is a pattern. Very good. Singleton is a pattern and static is a keyword. Absolutely. So let me put that thing out there. So singleton is a design pattern. That means we need to do some extra coding into it, and static is a keyword. Again, coming to the same question, it creates a single instance of an object, right, Vishal? So the question again is, like, if it is a pattern, then I know that when you say pattern means it will need some code, right? You have to write some extra code. So what are those extra code which you need to write, which static does not have it, right? I can see some inputs from Rahul here. Static classes cannot maintain state. So Rahul, like, static is a global object, it does maintain state, right? So if you look at I have not created here a static class, I have created a static object just to correct it. So it does maintain state, it's a global state, right? So I did not get that statement. Sachin is saying in static only static data. Okay. Divesh, yes, we have to do some extra coding for singleton. Singleton can be passed as a parameter, right? So singleton can be passed as a parameter. Ajit, so again the same thing. The question is that static object can also be passed as a parameter, and static object you don't need to really pass as a parameter because it's already global, right? Now, so let me go back. I can see some discussion out there, but let us try to go to the main thing. So I'm going to go back and again switch, my scenes out here, and let me just keep referring the Wikipedia because I feel that. So this is there, right? So so now very quickly, first thing, when you say that, one is that you have to have one global object, right? So when you talk about a global object, so let me go back here and go back to my whiteboard and let us try to visualize. So definitely, like, static is so when you say a global object, a single object, right? The time you create a global object which is shared across your project, right, you also need to take care of a lot of things. The first thing you need to take care is that if possible, we can do lazy loading out here, right? So if you see this Wikipedia very quickly, I can just highlight it out here. Okay, lazy loading, right? Second, I would like to really also you can see this Wikipedia has lots of code out there, but I don't want to go through all the code. We will see the code in CSharp, definitely. But let me, right, so Wikipedia also does not answer it the best, right? It's so sad, right? They have not answered it everything. I was expecting something out there. Must be I will go and update the Wikipedia, right? Okay, so that is, let me see if, no, they have not done anything out there, right? So fine. So let me talk here and then I'll go back to Wikipedia. So first thing is lazy loading. For example, in static objects, what happens is the data is loaded if you need or if you don't need it. Means the time you say static and if you load it in the constructor, let's say you load the country master, it is loaded. It is loaded even though if your application does not need it, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is thread safety. I think this should have been the first thing I should have discussed, right? Thread safety. if this global object is accessed by two threads, it should be safe. For example, in the country collection, assume, let's say you are loading the country collection, you are refreshing some country collection, at the same time somebody is accessing it. So let's say in the database you have 5 data and now you have 10 countries, right? The client who will the client who is out there, there can be a condition, wherein the countries will be completely null, isn't it? So we should just have thread safety as well, right? So if you talk about singleton pattern, definitely it will need the static keyword. In case, at least in CSharp, it will need the static keyword, to create the single instance. But a singleton pattern is equal to the static keyword only helps him to make the object global. So this guy just helps you to make the object global, but he does not help it to make it thread safe. That's the code you need to write. He does not help you to make, does not help you to implement lazy loading, right? He does not help you to do encapsulation, right? Or I will say, let me put encapsulation, right? Or encapsulated iterator. That's a nice word, I like it, right? Let me use encapsulation, and I will add an extra out there, an iterator. So that means, for all these things out here, these extra things out here, you need to go and write code. So the difference between singleton, as everyone said, yes, it is a pattern. Pattern means there should be some extra coding in it, right? Not just static keyword. And also all these things. For example now, so what I will do here, in normal cases, when you see a singleton pattern, so you will have a separate class. First thing, you should have a separate class. So for example, here I will have a class, a static class, most probably a static class, which will say singleton. And this static class will now have country master list. It can have a hit counter. It can have anything, right? And it should be and everything should be private, encapsulated. So in other words, what I will do is I'll create a private, definitely static list of countries. So like I can also say that this singleton pattern is a wrapper on a lot of things, right? It's a wrapper which does global object, it does thread safety, it has iteration, it has encapsulation. So you can see here now I'm making it private, right? And I will make it null. So you can see the first thing is, this is not a naked variable. It is not like this. Think about this. This static object out country is out here. Any developer can go and somewhere make it null. Think about it. If somebody goes and does this, you are gone. I again repeat this sentence. A naked static object out there, anybody can go and destroy it. Anybody can go and manipulate it. Think about it. You have a country master, and there is one funny developer out there who is accessing the country master. He adds his own country out there. Or he just, for a fun, he just goes and makes it null. I'm not saying fun. I know that developers don't do fun. But I'm saying must be he makes a mistake of doing it null, right? And once he does null out there, it is going to go and affect everyone, because this country object is global. So the first thing is, I feel, personally, that singleton encapsulates those global objects. Anybody cannot go and just hamper it, right? And second, it is lazy loaded. So basically, I will have a method like this, static method, list of country, get countries. So until somebody does not call get countries, this underscore countries is not getting loaded. So you can see here, if underscore countries, I'm sorry, it's afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and a dizzy afternoon, so must be I don't have that energy of coding here. So you can see new list of countries, lazy loading. So again, one more feature out here, on demand loading. Lazy loading. So point number 1, protected, encapsulated. Point number 2, lazy loaded, right? Also, as I've said, that nobody should be able to go and destroy that object. For example, you can see now this is the list of countries. If let us say now, let me use our singleton pattern out here. So I'll go out here and say I want to access the singleton object, but look at the problem. So singleton dot, I will say get countries, but the problem is I can go and say add. Now that is bad, right? So somebody can go and say add, and then somebody can go and say it null. Who knows, what kind of things can developers can do. So like someone can, because all the objects are by ref, so what someone can do is where countries, and he can destroy this country's object. And if this country's object is destroyed, then your complete global object can shake your system, right? So the another important point is that it should be implementing iterator. If somebody wants to go and browse through these get countries, then I would really use an iterator pattern. So point 3, safe iteration. How do you do a safe iteration? I will probably make this as I enumerable. When you make it as I enumerable, you don't get those manipulative methods. None of the developers can really go and say now say dot add. You can't do that. You can see that you only have the enumerated methods, right? So this is the third point I would like to see, that a singleton pattern should have, And the most important one, let us say if I have a method out here which is for loading these countries. Let us say someone is going and loading these countries out here. Somewhere out there, they are loading this list of countries. For instance, let us say public static void load countries, let us say. So let's say, or refresh countries. Now, whenever you are refreshing the countries, you just want that when that refresh is happening, and at the same time, if someone else is accessing, he should not be able to access it, isn't it? So probably what you would like to do is when you're loading it, you would like to go and lock the countries and do it. So must be you would like to have a lock out here, right? Lock the underscore countries, and then do the loading part out here. New list of countries, right? So one more thing which I would like to see out here is point number 4, thread safety. So this is thread safety, right? So either you can use a mutex or either you can use a semaphore. Please watch my multi-threading videos out on Questpond. So just putting down the context out there, and many more things, guys, I'm not really aware of. I'm not aware of that what can be the scenarios where a global object can have problems. So there can be many more things out there. So for me, singleton is a class, it's a wrapper, which also has lots of those extra brownie things, like thread safety and lazy loading and encapsulation and iteration, right? And the most important part which I feel is this creation of static object, is a technological thing. In other words, somebody can say, okay, like I will not use static object, I will use the ASP.NET Cache object. It's okay if you want to use the ASP.NET Cache object. Or someone can use something else, which is more global out there, right? So the technical part of making a global object is more of a programming feature, the programming language feature, or the technology like ASP.NET, which has cache objects, right? But it does not have the extra nuts and bolts, like thread safety and lazy loading and so on, right? So I feel that singleton pattern is equal to static plus thread safety plus lazy loading plus encapsulation plus iteration, safe iteration, and many more things which I'm not aware of. So if you go to this Wikipedia link out here, and if you look at those codes out here, for example, this is a Java code out here, you will see that this is lazy loading. So you can see the instance is null, and if the instance is null, then only load it, or else don't load it. We use the lock keyword, they have something called as synchronized, right? And many other things, which is out here, right? So when you say singleton out there, it's a pattern, it has some extra coding, right? And clearly the pattern definitely says that restricts the instantiation of a class to one single instance, but it should not have side effects. It should not have thread safety issues. It should not have performance issues, which like, just to load all the objects, even though you don't need it, you have loaded it, right? So I think, those things are not given clearly out here on the Wikipedia as well as it is discussed, but I feel that is something has to be updated. So they have updated the code. I can see that everybody codes the singleton pattern in a proper way. They create a class, they make the constructor private. They do have all that, but it is not discussed openly out there, or probably not explicitly mentioned that these are the differences, right? And also, I would like to highlight out here that this singleton is more of an anti-pattern. Means it is used unnecessarily, even though when it is not beneficial. For example, if you go to any of the interviews out there, people just ask you which pattern have you used in your project, and he will just say that singleton pattern. So it is overused or misused or used when it's not needed at all. People have just created static objects and created a mess around it, right? So I feel that it's definitely an anti-pattern. It should be used as per the needs of the project. You want to do some caching, you want to do some performance tuning, right? And that's why a lot of people say it's an anti-pattern, right? And remember that global objects, whenever you do something, you create a global object out there, right? You are calling for trouble. If you have a global object out there, that means that everybody is manipulating it. And when everybody is manipulating it, you can have bugs, you can have issues, right? So let me again go back to chat. Let me know that, this, as I said, that this is a more of a discussion. It's not that I want to teach here something, I'm just here to say that what I think is singleton pattern. Most common use is a logger. Is it related to dependency injection? No, Pritesh. Singleton pattern does not have any relation to the dependency injection. It can have an indirect, but not like a real. It is not meant for dependency injection, right? What are the real world example from Divesh? So real world example, Divesh, I've already said the first one, which I think is that you want to do caching. You want to load the object once, for example, a country master or a state master, you want to just load it once and then you don't want to load it again and again. Second examples are like hit counter. So you want to just go and do a hit counter. As someone has said out here, logger object. Now logger object, you need a single instance probably. You want to just have a single instance. You don't want to create the instance again and again. So I again feel that singleton pattern is there, right? But we use singleton for data-based object creation. So yeah, I did not get that, Swarup. If you can type down more out there, right? Okay, so any questions, guys? So this is a very small topic and I will just stick to the topic out here. And let me iterate, what I have said. First thing must be I can write down on the board, and please put down everyone. So first point, as everyone has said, singleton is a pattern, and static is a keyword definitely, but it has a lot of those things extra which are needed, right? Like thread safety, lazy loading, right? Encapsulation and a lot of other things, right? Second, most important, again, which I've said, it is an anti-pattern, means people use it unnecessarily, where it is not needed, it is still used it, right? So must be, you should really think about the scenario where you should use and where you should not use it. The third thing is, the singleton pattern, whenever we are creating in CSharp, you will definitely need certain keywords out there. The lock keyword for thread safety. For lazy loading, you can use the lazy keyword as well. In case you are not aware of the lazy keyword, you can search on this YouTube channel. I've talked about the lazy keyword, and definitely, you should use IEnumerable so that you have what you call safe iteration. People cannot manipulate it, right? So encapsulation, right? Fourth one, which I feel is also again important out here, is that the use of singleton pattern for data sharing or data caching. Second, data caching, and also like you want to share some global data, like global chat messages or hit counters, or something which is more global, right? And second, also some of those objects like logger and utility objects, rather than creating an instance again and again, people just want to use it, right? But remember, be very careful. For example, a logger object, I probably won't make it global. We can have a discussion on it, but think about it. A logger object is global out there, and let us say at the same time 2 errors happen. So it should not override the previous error, right? Both of the errors should be logged properly. So these are some of the notes which I put at the last of the class. Any questions, please put down on the chat. Yep. Yeah, thank you, Akshay, and same to you. Happy Guru Purnima. I hope that everybody learns a lot of things. Yes. Right. So it can be passed to methods, while static object as it is not cannot be passed. Okay, fine. Oh, that's a good thing. Okay, I got it, Aditya. What you're saying? Okay, I got it. Okay, okay, fine. That's a good thing what Aditya has said. I'm sorry, that I misread it. This is again, I should put one as a benefit. When you create a static object or a static class, you can't do those object oriented programming things. That is so right. You can't really go and do inheritance. You can't really go and do polymorphism. And this is very important point. I like, Aditya, thank you very much. That's what, like when you say design pattern, we should be discussing some of the things I won't remember. I think if you see one of the implementation which is really seen across the industry is that people don't create this using the static keyword. You will see people doing like this, class singleton, and they make the constructor private this way. That's again a topic which is very interesting. Why do they make the constructor private? So basically, definitely it is having the same thing out here. It's means this code is all running. If you make a static class, let me tell you, this is the right way of doing it. Even if you look at Wikipedia, they have not used the word static. I'm sure that even if I look at the C# implementation, they have made the class sealed. Well, that's a debatable thing, but they have made the class as a normal class and not as a static class. And I'll tell you why. In C# you can see here, actually they have given in Wikipedia 2 implementation. Thank you very much. Sealed one with the private, and then a static one, which I discussed before the class, right? I would prefer this version of it. Why? Because if I have a normal class, I can do all those tricks of object-oriented programming. I can inherit from the class. I can do polymorphism. I can implement an interface, right? I'm like, how do you say, godlike, I can do all the object-oriented programming things out there, free willy, right? Free strike. But when I'm into singleton, when I'm into this static class out there, I get restricted with a lot of things. Suddenly I find I can't do this. You can now have a private method, or you cannot, all the objects should be static. And I come into a restriction out there, right? So I feel that, creating a class, a normal class, and doing it helps you to keep that benefits of object-oriented programming out here. I'll add it out here that basically to create a singleton, a best practice would be, is that the 5th point is that create a normal class with private constructor. Right. Again, guys, this is my thought process out here. It's not needed that you have to implement it. In my project, I've seen a lot of my team leads, they make the class as static, and I welcome that. But if you get those hardliners out there, right, the design pattern hardliners, the architects who don't want to see a single hair here and there, must be they would like to see a normal class with a private constructor, right? So again, let me go back to the discussion board out here. Let me know anything. That's a very good point made there by Aditya. Yes, Aditya. Sorry, I mistook that statement what you had previously, and I've just added more to it. What is the disadvantage of singleton? So Ajay, it should be used properly. Like, what is the disadvantage of having a knife? Nothing. But if the knife is used to cut a vegetable, it is good. But if you start using knife for something nonsense, then it is not useful. The same way for singleton pattern. If you use it for data sharing, if you use it for something which is relevant, it is always useful. It is an anti-pattern, or it is the most discussed one, because this design pattern is very easy. The mentality of developers is that things which are easy, a human is that, I will say, if something is easy out there, people talk about it. People don't talk about factory pattern or other design patterns, because they are tough to understand, right? So a singleton pattern is very much talked, because it is easy. People think that you just do static and singleton is done. You can clear interviews. And the implication is that in projects it is used left and right, not thinking about the consequences, right? So there is no disadvantage of singleton pattern. It just has to be used in the right place. Okay. So there is, as I've said, that there are no disadvantages really. So thank you very much, guys. This was just a 30 minutes of session today. It's not a topic. We can elaborate it a lot, but that the topic is very small. But I hope that this small discussion has helped you to conclude that static and singleton is both different. Static is a technical keyword. A singleton is a pattern with a lot of nuts and bolts and protection, right? And one special request out here, we try to do these 30 minutes of session, 40 minutes of session on YouTube, right? I would suggest, everyone, please go ahead and share this video out. Let everyone know that, such kinds of topics are taken on this channel out here. And if possible, please subscribe to my Questpond website. Please subscribe to my channel. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Rajesh, thank you, Rahul, thank you, Tintu, Ajay, Vikram, Amrish, Nikunj, Aditya, thank you very much for the nice sentence. I'm sorry, there was a miscommunication. Surajit, Neti, and Divesh, and a lot of people who have put down the messages out there. Happy learning. Just quickly, people who are from Questpond out here, yesterday night we had a problem. There is a lot of rains happening in Mumbai, and my internet went off, and I had two internets, both of them went off. But today we are again connecting AZ204, Azure 204 we are taking. And today my goal is that I'm going to go and cover manage identities, how to use manage identities with the Azure Active Directory and in connection with the Azure API, right? The Azure API. And the second one is I'm going to go and talk about how to use JWT token. So how to implement a JWT token with a secure format between the front-end API and the back-end API, right? And don't forget, on Tuesday, again, people who are Questpond members, Tuesday, we are having the data structures training, right? So last Tuesday, we have done some data structure stuff, and this Tuesday again, last Tuesday we did the Tower of Hanoi, right? And this Tuesday again, we are doing a new data structure out there, which is the salesman logic, right? Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you.